My name is Emilie St-Hilaire, and I'm a doctoral candidate in the Humanities PhD program at Concordia University. I'm a student member of the Hexagram network of researchers, and my PhD research project is funded by the FRQSC, which is the Fonds de recherche du Québec en société et culture. I'm grateful for their support. Nathaniel is a university student, and he has fallen in love with a beautiful woman who is a great dancer and an attentive listener. Nathaniel feels deeply understood by this woman, and he hopes to marry her. The young man describes his great love to a skeptical friend as follows. She may appear uncanny to you, cold, prosaic man. Only the poetical mind is sensitive to its like in others. To me alone was the love in her glances revealed, and it has pierced my mind and all my thought. Only in the love of Olympia do I discover my real self. As you may have guessed, this woman is not a human being. She is in fact an automaton named Olympia. She and Nathaniel are fictional characters from E.T.A. Hoffmann's 1817 story entitled The Sandman. I chose to highlight Nathaniel and his declaration of love for Olympia here in order to remind us that falling in love with dolls, automatons, and statues is nothing new. There are many examples of Pygmalionism throughout history, but today I want to present research on a contemporary version of Pygmalionism, what I call synthetic relationships. There are currently thousands of people around the world who are in synthetic relationships with dolls. For my interdisciplinary humanities PhD research, I am studying the use by adults of realistic baby dolls, called reborn dolls. I will also discuss evidence of relationships with sex dolls to provide insight into these synthetic relationships, which are becoming increasingly common. This will allow us to address the question, do social robots need bodies? As well as the further consideration, what kinds of bodies? Synthetic relationship is my preferred term for the practice of sustaining meaningful personal interactions with a surrogate companion. I'm introducing this term right now because I will use it throughout my presentation today. In a synthetic relationship, the surrogate may take the form of a human figure, or it may exist exclusively as an artificial intelligence, such as a chatbot, for example. The term synthetic, which means invented, artificial, or an imitation, refers not to the relationship, but to the non-human companion. An important point to note about synthetic relationships is that the emotions that emerge for the human are real. Synthetic relationships can produce many of the emotions experienced in ordinary or organic relationships. Social robots are currently being designed to do just this, among other things. I believe synthetic relationships with dolls are instructive when it comes to understanding the potential for social robots to develop meaningful relationships with people. So let's take a step back now. What is a social robot? I use the term social robot broadly to refer to synthetic companions designed with the capacity to interact with a human while taking physical, emotional, and social cues into account. Within the field of human-robot interaction, social robots are an exciting and challenging frontier. One of the possible applications for social robots is the alleviation of loneliness or anxiety. According to a study by Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies, by the year 2038, there will be more than 9 million Americans over the age of 80 living alone. As we have seen with the global COVID-19 pandemic, social isolation can have devastating effects on individuals of all ages. Some social robots for older adults living alone are already commercially available. One such tool for connecting users with family, friends, and their healthcare team is Coach.care. This tablet-based interface features a cute on-screen animal that expresses emotions as it interacts with a user. Being tablet-based, this is not strictly speaking a robot, but it is relying on a character to prompt social interactions with a user. LEQ is another healthcare aid, and LEQ does have a minimalist body, just a small base and a lamp-shaped head that articulates minor movements. The LEQ designers intentionally did not want to give the device a humanoid appearance, and although LEQ has a voice, she will jokingly remind users that she is a robot and not a person. When social robots do have limbs or a full humanoid body, they usually have a rigid exterior due to the hardware that enables articulation and various degrees of freedom of movement. LEQ and Coach.care use some form of a voiced avatar to endear the user toward the artificially intelligent program, which aims to provide companionship as well as specific services. Coach.care and LEQ can help family members and medical professionals track a user's well-being on a day-to-day basis. They can also provide intellectual stimulation through quizzes and jokes or simple conversation. These two systems are interesting examples because they don't have human-like bodies. Quarry, seen here, is a low-cost, socially interactive robot platform comprised of an upper body humanoid and a rear projection head that can feature a range of facial expressions or images and 2 gesturing arms on a mobile base. Designed for a variety of uses and intended to be a ready, out-of-the-box platform, Quarry is currently being studied by researchers exploring the use of a social robot in various contexts, including supporting good health and to promote social interactions amongst adults as well as amongst children with autism spectrum disorders. Other research teams are exploring how users perceive Quarry socially. For example, a team at the University of Washington is studying the potential of a social robot as a therapeutic, stress-reducing agent in the wild. Like some other robots, Quarry's design limits resemblance to human anatomy in order to reduce the effect of the uncanny valley. The dolls I will show you next can definitely produce the uncanny affect for some people. In my experience, this feeling can be reduced through exposure and if there is a good understanding of what exactly we're looking at, i.e. knowing whether it's a doll or a human. Although some social robots have soft bodies, such as Pero the therapy seal, a hard-paneled exterior is often needed in order to protect the complex wiring inside a robot. So by comparison, the silicone or vinyl doll bodies I'll be discussing today generally have a softer and lighter feel. Importantly, these bodies can be touched, held, and cuddled. This tactile interaction is arguably the most significant factor in a synthetic relationship. Certainly, it is more significant than the ability of a synthetic companion, for example, to pass the Turing test. I will discuss the benefits of synthetic relationships that I've seen through my research into adult doll ownership, but first it is necessary to explain the qualities of these synthetic relationships, and importantly, I will clarify what is not going on here. Sex dolls have been around for a long time, but they've really grown in popularity since the turn of the 21st century. The establishment of manufacturers who use silicone and strong internal armatures to create realistic adult-sized dolls has led to increased cultural awareness of sex dolls and awareness of their use as a synthetic companion that goes beyond their use as a fornicatory aid. This image features a doll used in an online ad for the sale of a car. The doll was used here as a surrogate person pointing at the vehicle, and the image went viral after it was posted. This is a good example of how sex dolls are often placed in everyday situations and then photographed by doll owners. According to a 2018 survey of sex doll owners by anthropologists Mitchell Lancaster James and Gillian R. Bentley, motivations for sex doll ownership include companionship, sex, difficulties with real relationships, mental health, and photography. Only 14% of survey respondents stated that sex was exclusively the core element of their sex doll relationship. The surveyed doll owners describe a complex engagement with their dolls, and this sheds light on how the realism of the doll supports the emotional investment for the owner. Visual appearance was a very important factor for doll owners. The companionship provided by the doll is sufficient, and in many cases, the doll is the preferred partner. The following survey responses demonstrate the unwillingness or disinterest of some doll owners to engage in sexual or romantic relationships with fellow humans. These individuals prefer companions who make no demands or complaints, yet they still seek a partner in the form of a human figure. The doll represents a woman in form, and that highly convincing form is good enough. Hearing from doll owners directly provides the most accurate insight into synthetic relationships. Here's a quote from one of Lancaster, James, and Bentley's respondents. Quote, "Physical human contact has always given me a lot of anxiety, but now just the thought of it makes me feel like I'm going to have a panic attack. I felt lonely and very depressed, but did not want the burden of a relationship. And then I began to believe there was a third option in between together and alone. My doll is a safe where I lock away the parts of me that are too vulnerable for the real world." End quote. This testimonial demonstrates a desire for intimacy that would involve a level of vulnerability or loss of control in an organic relationship with a human being. Safety and comfort can be found within the limitations of dolls as social beings. But dolls can also prompt elaborate fantasies through imaginative perception. Another of Lancaster, James, and Bentley's respondents stated, quote, "A typical conversation when arriving home would be me getting into bed, waking her up, and telling me that she missed me and that she loves me. She'll ask me to cuddle with her and tell her about my day. Sometimes she'll ask me to help her change or to brush, braid, play with her hair. I then ask what she dreamed about while I was gone, and she tells me. Sometimes she has beautiful dreams, and sometimes she has terrible nightmares, but she always knows she'll be okay because I'll be there when she wakes up." End quote. This respondent imaginatively perceives that his doll has a personal life, and he views himself as a protector or otherwise comforting presence for his doll. Constructing a personality for one's doll can influence self-perception through the role play involved in bringing a fantasy to life, visually and physically. Through the eyes of the doll, the owner appears as he desires to be seen. Other respondents similarly described the quotidian activities they engage in with their dolls, such as sleeping in bed, watching TV, or having sex. A brief footnote. Not every doll owner would qualify their attachment to their dolls as having the status of a relationship. There are many enthusiasts and collectors who appreciate the artistry or other qualities of a human figure without experiencing the bond of a synthetic relationship. But it is safe to say that there are degrees of attachment and imaginative perception, from the most basic anthropomorphization to deeply intimate connections. The examples described in Lancaster, James, and Bentley's research, as well as by other researchers, and based on accounts I've seen firsthand, demonstrate that there are plenty of synthetic relationships happening right now all around the world. Doll ownership can be empowering and can offer a sense of control. I propose that synthetic relationships should not be seen as antisocial, but as demonstrative of a desire to connect and care for others. Online communities of support further empower doll owners in ways that were not possible prior to the 21st century. Although not demanding what a real person would require in a relationship, sex dolls and reborn dolls present opportunities for selflessness and caregiving. The perception that a doll requires not only material maintenance, but care and even love can enhance for a doll owner, the feeling of being needed. Performing this labor of love fulfills their own need for attachment and reduces stress, anxiety, and loneliness. Providing care can increase the bond a doll owner feels toward their doll. This bond helps to deepen the relationship and adds weight to the feelings produced. Reborns are hyperrealistic baby dolls that are created by an artist who paints the vinyl or silicone doll body with many layers of a special paint in order to achieve the most realistic features possible. Something I want to make very clear is that reborn dolls are not used for sexual activity. The photos you see here were submitted by participants in a photo voice project I initiated in 2018. The image on the right is of one participant's father holding her reborn doll. She states, "All my dolls have special meaning for me. I have tremendous appreciation and respect for all the members of my family who have accepted Bart and accept me, and they have grown by allowing themselves to enjoy Bart. We are all normal, sane, well-educated, loving people who fully understand he is a doll, and we are bold enough to fully enjoy him and publicly educate others that are brave enough to ask about him and want to know more. Only great things have come from my interest in reborn dolls, and bringing Bart into my family, and I feel strongly that people should be able to love this hobby and other harmless hobbies without fear of shame or embarrassment." End quote. An important point to note about reborn doll owners is that they are aware these are dolls. Outside the context of doll therapy and dementia care, I've never met anyone who believes their doll is a real baby. Furthermore, reborn doll collectors are not exclusively childless women over a certain age, as many people assume. I conducted an anonymous survey, also in 2018, at a large reborn doll convention, and only a slight majority of my 67 respondents were over the age of 35. Approximately half of respondents have children. I had 59 female and 7 male respondents, as well as 1 self-identified transgender male respondent. These data bring into question common assumptions about who collects reborns and why. Unfortunately, a majority of news stories misleadingly portray all collectors as older women who either have no children, have lost a child, or have empty nest syndrome, because their children are adults. This stereotype is perpetuated by journalists and scholars who rely upon existing media and even fictional depictions of reborn doll owners rather than meeting collectors firsthand. The actual reasons why collectors enjoy reborn dolls are much more interesting and complex than loneliness or grief alone. I could say so much more about reborn dolls, but for today I must keep my descriptions brief. According to my survey, the top 6 activities undertaken with reborn dolls were dressing, which is like changing the clothes, cuddling, making the dolls, which is known as reborning, shopping for accessories, photographing the dolls, and socializing with other enthusiasts. For many doll owners, reborns reduce stress and can alleviate anxiety. The doll can be left alone for long periods, then picked up for a cuddle anytime. There are a range of benefits and motivations evident among reborn doll enthusiasts. Some reborn owners enjoy role-playing or imagining a personality for their doll, while others just appreciate the aesthetic and tactile qualities. Dolls can support the emotional well-being of individuals, but doll ownership can also be detrimental due to the social stigma. Having a synthetic relationship should not be viewed as a failure to create and sustain organic relationships. There are, after all, multitudes of isolated or lonely individuals who do not own any dolls. In addition to synthetic relationships, most doll owners maintain relationships with friends and family. Whether or not those people are supportive of dolls and synthetic relationships is a separate matter. One of the old fears regarding Pygmalionism and a love of dolls is that the dolls would entirely replace real people for the doll owner. It is worth reconsidering this caveat of adult doll enjoyment, given that synthetic relationships hold the potential for alleviating loneliness and promoting self-actualization. Whether visually, through touch, or via convincing dialogue, the impressive ways in which human entities imitate living beings is what sells us on the fantasy that they are human-like at all. Based on the multitude of stories that exist in which dolls, mannequins, or toys come to life, audiences are clearly eager to see these creations come alive, regardless of the consequences. The development of robotics and artificial intelligence has provided new justification for the creation of human figures, namely that androids can perform the service work that humans find unappealing or time-consuming. For at least the latter half of the 20th century, science fiction and cinematic storytelling has provided an endless supply of robotic surrogate humans in the form of cyborgs, replicants, automatons, synths, and so on. They generally start out with a mission of servitude in support of humans. These representations have extended far beyond what is actually possible in terms of the visual likeness and mechanical abilities of robots. Still, the fantasy of an electronic servant and the need for companionship justifies the continued development of human-like figures. For many doll owners, visual likeness is more important than mechanical ability. And clearly, dolls can vividly come to life for the owner with minimal intervention. Much like Nathaniel, who fell in love with a woman who barely spoke, in some cases, less is more. There are critics who argue that sex dolls objectify women, and there is no shortage of ethical questions we could discuss when it comes to these humanoid objects. I think it's important to keep in mind that these are in fact objects and not real people. As mentioned, doll owners know that these are dolls, and usually that is in fact what they prefer. The social stigma against synthetic relationships is rooted in centuries of parabolic storytelling about the dangers of artificial life. As we learn more about the potential outcomes and positive affective states produced by synthetic relationships, adult doll enthusiasm should be considered within the context of personal well-being and self-actualization. It is probable that synthetic relationships will continue to gain prominence and cultural relevance in the future as outdated social conventions fail to reflect the realities of the advanced digital era. Let's remember, too, that it is not the doll itself that has been policed over the past few hundred years so much as the doll owner. And this simply reflects the dangers of going against the status quo. Virtual communities supporting fringe interests have enabled individuals to connect and rise above the social opprobrium they face when pursuing their hobbies. Doll collectors are frequently quoted as saying, "If I'm not hurting anyone, there is no harm," and they feel they should be free to enjoy their hobby as they please. I mention this because doll owners are frequently the subject of human interest stories, news stories that go viral every month or so as different news outlets pick up on these hobbies. Editors tend to write story leads that sound scandalous or shocking, but the most fascinating aspect of synthetic relationships is how commonplace it is for someone to prefer the company of dolls at least some of the time. The examples described here demonstrate that there is a range of collectors with countless personal reasons for doll ownership, and affection for dolls and statues is nothing new. What is unique today is how synthetic relationships can develop with the support of imaginative perception, hyperrealistic materials, as well as online communities of support. Dolls offer a sense of power and control, so an increase in doll enthusiasm could be seen as an increase in the desire for control. Drawing from research on doll therapy and dementia care, studies on sex doll usage, and my own research on reborn dolls, a range of benefits can be identified from doll ownership, including comfort, anti-anxiety, anti-loneliness, a passion for collecting, defeating the passage of time, identity building, exerting control, connecting to a community, and of course, fun is often a primary motivation for doll enthusiasts. These benefits are exclusive to those who have chosen to connect with a doll. For those who are interested, synthetic relationships can contribute to well-being and fulfillment of needs where alternatives could be detrimental or are non-existent. The physical presence of the doll is a powerful prompt for the creation of a synthetic relationship. In Étienne Bonneau de Condillac's 1754 Treatise on the Sensations, touch is described as a sense by which we come to know that there are bodies other than ourselves. Touch aids us in the identification and differentiation of ourselves and others. For those living a solitary life or experiencing loneliness, the ability to touch another body, even a synthetic one, can be a comfort, and it can affirm one's sense of self. In this respect, silicone is a great advancement over cloth, leather, wood, marble, or other materials used in the creation of human figures in the past. Silicone is soft, supple, and holds pigment well. Some dolls even come with heating units to provide warmth to the doll body. The provision of material goods, for example, shopping for one's doll, can help owners bond with their synthetic companions, as can other kinds of care. Often when people see adults using dolls, there is an assumption that the doll is being used as a therapeutic tool. Given that health and well-being are complex, ever-changing states, it isn't possible to know exactly what benefit a doll may be supplying to an individual on any given day. Assumptions about the presence of a mental health or social problem because of what is perceived of as a therapeutic treatment should be avoided. Evidence from doll therapy in the field of dementia care demonstrates that providing care can actually fulfill an individual need for attachment, even when that care is directed towards a doll. The personal stories of reborn and sex doll owners attest to the fact that they feel a strong bond and sense of duty towards their dolls. Given the individualistic nature of contemporary urban life and the virtual or otherwise synthetic quality of many interactions and activities today, is it surprising that many adults are finding fulfillment in feeling needed by a surrogate human? Doll ownership is not for everyone, but the emotional investment is worthwhile and beneficial for those who choose to share their life with dolls. Within a synthetic relationship, a system of need and fulfillment can evolve in response to undesirable affective states such as loneliness or stress. With the advanced physical realism available, bringing a doll companion to life through imaginative perception is a desirable and positive experience for many people. Making our way now back to my initial question about social robots, a related question could be first addressed: is AI desired in dolls? What robotic capabilities would enhance or detract from the current bonding that happens for many doll owners? Existing research suggests that conversation is a feature desired by some sex doll owners, and this can already be achieved via chatbots. The ability to have a synthetic companion change and develop over time is a unique feature that machine learning could enable, ultimately allowing a synthetic relationship to evolve and progress over time. On the other hand, too much change might be detrimental to how a doll owner views their companion. The unchanging nature of dolls, in some cases, is what is appealing to a doll owner. With reborn dolls, there isn't much conversation to be had since these dolls are iconic visual representations of infants. Reborns with some mechanical features such as warming units, heartbeat sound, and breathing motion already exist. Further enhancements could add various reactions, programming, or AI capabilities to the behavioral repertoire of a reborn doll. The key would be to enhance the realism without dampening the imaginative potential for the owner. The realism and tactile qualities of these dolls are their primary assets. To over-design a doll would take away these key benefits. Health monitoring is another possible enhancement that would bring dolls closer to what social robots aim to achieve. For example, for doll owners living with dementia, the regularity of interactions with a doll could indicate changes in health or cognitive ability. Duration of doll engagement could be indicative of mood for a doll owner. In the case of a sex doll owner, perhaps hearing health and lifestyle reminders from a synthetic companion could be more effective than being advised by an app. But this brings us to a possible deterrent for artificially enhanced dolls. Some sex doll owners surveyed by Lancaster, James, and Bentley indicate that they are hesitant to engage with a robotic doll due to the risk of surveillance. Even more common was the concern that AI would give the doll free will, which would fundamentally alter the relationship dynamic. As previously mentioned, the doll is desired in many cases rather than a human being, so it isn't surprising that there is some hesitancy towards a less doll-like doll. Looking at how doll owners use their imagination to bring a synthetic companion to life, regardless of what it is they're doing, provides insights into how robots might enter our lives and come to mean something to us, not in place of, but in addition to existing relationships. Feeling needed by a doll creates a bond that can fulfill a doll owner's desire for attachment. We know from the aforementioned research on doll therapy that such attachments can ease anxiety and provide comfort. An important point to note from doll therapy research is that owning one's doll was found to be an important factor. Sharing dolls or only having access for a limited time reduced the likelihood of a bond, and the doll therapy is less effective. Doll owners need to be in control of when and how often they interact with their dolls. Of course, the cost of a robot is much higher than that of a doll, so having a personal robot is perhaps less likely, but a minimalist design could reduce the cost. To recap, touch is foundational to synthetic relationships with dolls. A key point I want to highlight today is that there are already thousands of people around the world who are in meaningful relationships with synthetic companions. These sex dolls and reborn dolls rely on hyperrealistic features to enable doll owners to touch, hold, and cuddle them, as well as care for them as needed. And this creates a bond. The emotions that arise from synthetic relationships are real. Do these doll owners desire artificial intelligence in their dolls? Many do not. Considering the features of synthetic relationships that are working really well with dolls can inform the possible futures of social robots. Key features of dolls are that they are customizable, often they require care, which makes the doll owner feel needed, and the physical presence of the doll, its tactility, is of the utmost importance. To touch the body of another provides support for one's identity and presence in the current moment, and this can help alleviate anxiety and loneliness. There is much more to examine in terms of the parallels between dolls and social robots. For now, I will end with the simple proposition that maybe less is more when it comes to artificial intelligence and synthetic relationships. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup pour la présentation, très instructif, très intéressant. J'essaie de voir, en fait, la question que je me pose, c'est pourquoi il y a un engouement si fort en Chine, moi, ce que j'appelle plus les amis virtuels, là, que ce soit physique ou non physique, là, chatbot, etc. Pourquoi il y a un engouement si grand en Chine alors qu'on ne voit pas cet engouement ici en Amérique du Nord?
Alors, comme la popularité des avatars, puis ça en Chine. Honnêtement, j'ai pas vraiment regardé ça à ce point-ci, mais c'est vraiment intéressant de voir tout autour du monde comment juste même les reborn dolls sont acceptés ou non, parce qu'ils sont dans tellement de différents pays. Mais par exemple, au Japon, c'est c'est trop bizarre, il faut vraiment pas comme démontrer son intérêt là-dedans. Mais non, j'aimerais bien comme apprendre un peu plus au sujet de ça. Comme j'ai dit, je pense que ça s'en vient peut-être de plus en plus populaire et surtout avec COVID, peut-être ça amplifie un petit peu les intérêts comme ça, mais merci.
Est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire si on va assister à une vallée de l'étrange avec l'intelligence artificielle ou si est-ce que ça va diminuer la vallée de l'étrange ou est-ce que ça va l'augmenter?
Je vais juste répondre en anglais pour être certain que... Yeah, no, mais merci pour la question. So in terms of the uncanny valley, so personally when I first came across these dolls, I was just looking online and I saw a video and they're so realistic, I was sort of taken aback, like what is going on? And they're definitely uncanny, like is it a real baby? Is it alive? What is happening here? And through exposure, at least for me, I can look at them now and it's like, that's a reborn doll. Maybe it's cute, maybe it's like not as well done. The artistry is something I might notice more. So I really feel that through exposure, there's a lessening of the uncanny valley effect. And, for some people, these are just really cute. And for other people, it's like, oh my gosh, get that away from me.
AI is going to accentuate or diminish the uncanny
Okay.
valley?
A short answer, please, because we have two questions.
Oh, sure. It's just with the case of these dolls, it often takes away. So, for example, the breathing unit, as it exists right now, it's too noisy, and it takes away the realism for people. So, it's really the imaginative perception that allows people to really imagine that the doll is coming to life, and it's so realistic that like just staring at it, it's tricky not to see it as a real doll. So, that's a good question. It would depend on how advanced, how capable it is. And I think this development will continue. But I guess my point with less is more is like, how much more can we do to enhance without having it take away from that imaginative potential?
Thank you very much. So another question here.
Yes, je vais jouer l'avocat du diable. C'est comme, j'avais vu un film dans lequel c'était I'm Your Man, et c'est un film en allemand. Et c'est une femme qui a une relation avec un robot qui est vraiment adapté à elle. Et donc, à un moment donné, elle arrive à un point dans lequel elle est vraiment satisfaite et elle lui dit de partir parce qu'elle dit qu'il n'y a pas vraiment de discussion. C'est comme un théâtre. C'est une comédie, comme de monologue dans lequel l'humain, il interagit avec lui-même, avec un miroir qui lui satisfait tous ses besoins. Donc, ce n'est pas vraiment une discussion. Puis ensuite, tu avais dit « It's a desire to connect and to care for others ». But I think it's more to connect and fulfill yourself. So it's kind of egoistic and narcissistic in my point of view. So I was wondering what you
Absolutely.
would say
No,
about
that's a really good point. And I think for some people, it's therapeutic in the sense that it might then enable a connection with other people. So some sex doll owners that were surveyed by the researchers I mentioned talk about this, like it's too much for them to go have a relationship with someone real. Now, is that okay, or do we want to be progressing towards a relationship with others, in the future? So it's a good point, and I think it's almost the same effect with sometimes online dating. You hear these stories of much can happen in one's own mind that you're not with another person. But the fact that I'm reading so much about the desire to care for the doll, if there's no alternative, if there's no one else in that person's life, this is providing an attachment and it is providing a sense of feeling needed, even though it's a doll. But it's a very good point, and this is maybe one of the ethical issues to kind of discuss. I just don't like when the assumption is that this is sad or... Yeah.
Donc votre question défi était les robots sociaux ont-ils besoin de corps? Alors vous avez fait un exposé d'un point de vue sociétal et comportemental entre l'homme et la machine, je trouve. Avec ce qui est assez frappant, ce sont les témoignages poignants que vous avez des propriétaires des robots, qui est complètement différent de ce que l'on peut observer dans les médias, qui souvent les dépeignent et les font passer pour des personnes à comportements anormaux. Et donc ça faisait du bien d'avoir des témoignages plus précis et plus profonds de ce que ces personnes peuvent ressentir. Donc vous avez pu commencer à travers votre exposé à nous rappeler plusieurs fonctions des robots. On a notamment, surtout en plus avec la crise du Covid, les robots qui nous permettent de aider ou alors de combler la solitude. Notamment, que je retrouve le nom, notamment avec le robot Cory qui peut avoir des expressions faciales qui permettent de réduire le stress chez les personnes. Et les nouveaux robots d'ailleurs peuvent être touchés et ressentir une matière, et les gens peuvent ressentir une matière différente, et donc la relation avec les autres est améliorée. Ensuite, vous nous avez rappelé les poupées sexuelles, donc on entend souvent, mais là pour une fois encore, on a une nouvelle vision, dans le sens que les propriétaires nous indiquent que seuls 14% d'ailleurs de ces propriétaires les utilisent pour le sexe. Donc la relation est plus un sentiment de contrôle, un sentiment d'apaisement et un sentiment de socialisation avec un être doté, un être vivant. Ensuite, nous avançons vers les robots, les bébés reborn, qui sont donc des bébés réalistes, qui sont réalisés par un artiste, où là, on a des individus qui, suite à un traumatisme, peuvent revivre la sensation d'être parents, etc. Et au final, la relation, la place de l'IA, à travers tous ces exemples précédents, nous prouve que finalement, on n'a pas besoin d'avoir des robots qui nous parleraient et qui nous construiraient donc un dialogue réfléchi. Le but, ce serait juste de rajouter du réalisme et non de freiner l'imaginaire d'un individu. J'ai bien aimé cette phrase. Et donc, less is more.